Hi, I'm Dr. Sadhna, and this is LeaderVoices, a show about leaders and their infinite ability to change the world. Each episode in LeaderVoices, we dig into stories and sparks from for-purpose leaders, coaches, comedians, luminaries, and everyday heroes from around the globe. Tales of impact and failing forward, of aspirations and innovations, and the infinite and inspiring ways that social purpose leaders lead and make the world a better place. Join us today as we introduce a new guest. Paul Virzi is a stand-up comedian and host of two incredible podcasts called The Virzi Effect and Anything Better, which he hosts with none other than Bill Burr. His comedy special, the first one, Bill Burr Presents Paul Virzi, I'll Say This, went viral with over 5 million likes. You can check that out on Comedy Central. I was just watching, actually, your episode on Joe Rogan, which is like 3 hours long. I love the UFO story with your dad.
Yeah.
Check that out. And your latest special on Netflix, which was directed by Pete Davidson, Nocturnal Admissions, we got to talk about that title, is on Netflix and freaking hilarious. Absolutely, absolutely love it. It always cheers me up anytime. Like I need a good pick-me-up, any part, I can just click on it and go. More importantly, though, not only are you talented, brilliant, funny, and all the things that matter in life, you're extremely well respected in the industry and literally the nicest guy I've ever met.
Oh, I appreciate that. Actually, one more podcast. Me and Bobby Kelly do Bone to Pick, which is it's called Bone to Pick.
Bone to Pick. I gotta bring that up.
And it's doing very well. And it was something that was kind of like a inside joke between us, and it turned it into a podcast where people write in and send videos of things that bother them, and that's going really well too. So they could check that one out as well. It's called the Bone to Pick podcast.
Very cool. I'll check that out after this. I look forward to it. That's great. Bobby Kelly, he's hilarious.
Yeah, great.
Really cool. Well, Paul, you're literally
kind words too, because you're one of the nicest people that I've met in the business. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've never told you this, but you're literally my favorite comedian ever. And I always felt like conflicted because, I know so many comedians and I'm like, they're going to hate on me so hard if I say it. But that's it. I'm saying it. You're my favorite comedian ever. And I'm so excited and a little nervous to have you on the show. So welcome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I know how much comedy you've seen, and I know how many comedians you've been around and talked to. So that's an honor because I know you've talked to. I saw you back in the day in the green rooms of the Arizona comedy clubs talking to everybody. And so when you asked me those questions and you learned about me, for you to say those kind words means a lot because you've been around so much of it.
Thank you. No, I mean it. I appreciate it. I always got kind of nervous. I'm like, I'm going to be biased. It's going to impact my research if I have, that favoritism. But research is done, over with, so I can finally say it many, many years later.
I appreciate it.
Ironically, so you were on the show before, but originally this show was funded by American Express, and I got canceled since. And now it's, like my show, they don't fund it anymore. But it's kind of funny because I don't know if you know about like how it happened, but I'll tell you what happened. So I interviewed John Cleese, and it was right around the time when Hank Azaria posted kind of like an apology for cultural appropriation of Apu from The Simpsons.
Yep.
And then John Cleese tweeted that he apologizes on behalf of Monty Python for the cultural appropriation of British people. And American Express, my funder at the time, thought it was anti-woke. And so they made me choose between John Cleese and essentially the show, like not airing his episode. And, it was like a amazing honor to interview him. He's a comedy legend, and his daughter, Camilla. And so anyways, I chose John Cleese and they canceled my funding, which was great.
Hearing things like that, it's frustrating, but it's also like it's also freeing, and that's one thing that I'm learning now. It's like I have a new special that's about to come out. I don't know exactly where or when, but I kind of have an idea. But going to what you were saying, as much as this is the first time I think in the history of my life where watching what you have to say and almost feeling like you can lose your livelihood or lose opportunities for just being able to speak freely if it's unpopular to people in that industry because it doesn't fit their narrative. And that's a really sad thing. But the flip side is the freeing part of it because, you know, I have this special, and if I want, I can just put it out myself. And I'm actually considering my new special, which is my best work yet. My agent hit me up and saw it. You saw big chunks of it the last time you saw me in Arizona.
Yes.
And my agent was like, this is your best work and this and that. But instead of having to have an executive now look at it, review it, you know, we're also in an election year. So now if I say something, even in a joking manner, are those people going to be, it's going to be hard for those people to not be biased, even though I'm joking. And it's very unprofessional. And I don't want to say that that's the case with all of them, but it's something that I need to worry about and think about. I need to worry and think about a certain bit in that set that can make an executive go, oh, I don't really like, and even though it's subjective, that's not okay. But now I have the power, the same way you do, to do your own show now. And you don't have to worry about somebody giving you money or sponsoring because you're just going to say what you want to say and talk how you want to talk. And, you know, you shouldn't have to choose between John Cleese and that you shouldn't have to do that. You should just be able to talk freely, talk openly. And if somebody doesn't like it, they don't have to watch your show. But for a corporation to pull out financially because of that, it just goes to show that, yeah, you know what? I'll build my own YouTube channel and I'll do everything independently now. I already have somewhat of a fan base. I already, you know, am respected, thank God. So it's like, I have the power now and you have the power now. So to hear that is sad, but in a way, I'm also happy for you because I can almost see in your face that you're just relieved.
Oh, yeah. It's so much better. I mean, it would take them like 6 months and they would go through it would be like 4 different teams and then someone would get like let go and then a new person would come in. And I'd feel like such disrespect to the artist that I was interviewing because they're like, when are you going to air this? And I'm like, well, I'm waiting for them. And honestly, it was just awful. It was really difficult to produce a product that was, you know, respectful to the person who took the time to share their story with me. But I wonder, like, because you're doing, you know, national tours. I saw you're going to be in Germany pretty soon too. Like, how do you decide what you're going to say on stage with like the overly sensitive controversy of today's audiences?
You know, 2 years ago, I was in London and I didn't know how I was going to be received. However, I did sell it out and we added a show. So I figured since I sold it out and people liked me, they were probably on board with what I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is that sense of, oh man, I'm going to another country. Germany can definitely be different too. I've actually toured in Germany and like sometimes the German audiences, they look at comedy differently. So they'll watch me do a joke as if they're watching a scene in a movie. And then when it's over, they'll, you know, so like you think you're bombing. I'm like, oh, I'm bombing. I'm bombing right now. Like this is horrible. And then all of a sudden when it's done, so I had to adjust to that. But as long as the one thing that I've learned, to be honest with you, is as long as you're real and authentic and you say what you really feel, regardless of where you are in the world, that's just you and how you feel. And it's like, take it or leave it. And I've come to peace with that. Like, it's like, this is me and this is what I think. And this is what I'm going to say. And we're joking around and we're having a good time. And I don't care if I'm in Germany, New York, you know, Switzerland, Singapore, I'm just going to be me. And that's kind of a freeing feeling. So, but yeah, you always get a little nervous because it's such a different culture, you know?
Yeah, no, I can imagine because it's like that validation is so critical. So if there's like that moment of silence and they're kind of like taking it all in, and then at the very end, it's almost like you're doing a slow clap. It's like, that doesn't sound validating to me.
Yeah. I remember being on stage in I performed in Estonia.
Oh,
and when I performed in Estonia, stand-up comedy, and this is 7 years ago. So, I mean, it's still, and when I did that, they told me that stand-up comedy was only 8 years old in Estonia. So this was such a new art. And I was like, wait, what? And they were like, and they dressed like to the nines, like they were going to like some Broadway play. And you could tell it was new to them. And I'm up there doing my crazy shit. Like, I was like, I'm like, what are these people going to think? And then they end up appreciating it. But I hopefully, knock on wood, I'm at the point now where the fans that will come to see me know what they're getting in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So as I mentioned when I was introducing you, you're incredibly respected in the industry, not just because of your talent, because you're just awesome. Like people love you, and I think they really, truly want to see you share your gift with the world.
I appreciate that.
It's so true. I mean, you have, a lot of incredibly talented individuals supporting your comedy. Bill Burr, Pete Davidson. What's it like working with them? Do you get intimidated?
No, it's nice because having people that have either reached a height in this business that is rare air, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Or brilliant, comedians that have that just have honed their craft so beautifully over the course of multiple decades, say to me, oh, you're one of my favorites, or you're so funny, or like you're gonna be this and you're gonna do that, is humbling, because it's what you work for. And I care about being respected as much as I care about getting laughs. I just want people to, I guess, really see I guess I should say this. One of the compliments I get is how people say that they feel that I'm real and authentic, and that comes through on stage and it comes through on podcasts. And that means the world to me, because that's all I can ask. So for people in the business to say that to me at any level, whether it's a Bill Burr, a Dave Chappelle, or somebody else coming up, means the world. It really does mean a lot.
That's incredible. So let me ask you something. So research shows that it's called hedonic adaptation, but research shows that you have like winning the lottery. Like people who win the lottery will get like a huge dopamine hit for a short amount of time, but then their equilibrium of happiness tends to maintain on this steady line. And same thing if something bad happens, it'll go down for a bit. Even if they did studies on prisoners where they'd get incarcerated, and of course they'd be depressed for a while, but then they'd go right back up to their normal levels of happiness. And I just find this super fascinating. And I'm in a bunch of CEO groups where pretty much everyone on these calls has sold their companies, 10 times, 8 figures. And I have to like check myself so I can remember like how far I've come, instead of just grinding and being like, okay, what's next? So like, how do you personally manage kind of the balance between staying motivated and keep pushing forward while also kind of appreciating how far you've come?
That's a brilliant question. Probably one of the best questions I've ever gotten.
Thank you.
And it makes sense from you because of all the studying and all of the case studies that you've had. But that is such a spot on question for everything that we go through. And I've really just recently come to realize, to be honest with you, I've always been grateful and had gratitude, but to really stop and go like, when can you just sit back and go, because it's always the next thing.
Right.
And, I've had things happen that I was like, oh my God, if I can just get a Netflix special, if I could just get on Joe Rogan's podcast, and all of these things happen, and then you think that you're going to be fine, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, you know what? Now I need, like for me, the one thing that I didn't care about, because I cared so much of getting better at the art that I loved, is I didn't care about getting followers on TikTok. I didn't care about it. I didn't want you to see me making eggs and shit. Go, oh, look at me, I dancing and shit on TikTok. I'm not doing that. That's not who I am. I'm not going to dance and cook eggs so I could get 19 followers that day. That's not who I am. So, but now that hurt me in a way, but I realized it didn't hurt me because that was never me.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So like,
if
you just get on that podcast, if you just get on that podcast, I mean, it's a little bit of a circus and it's a shit show, but if you just get on that podcast, and I'm like, oh, that would be great for my following. But then I look at that podcast and I go, That's not me. That's not me. That was never me. I would put myself in a position that was uncomfortable, not real, fake for the wrong reason. If the wrong reason is doing things for a certain, like doing something out of character to get followers, that's not who I am. What I want to do is, yes, of course, we want to be famous, and you want to be famous for being great at what you do. You want to make money, but I want fame and fortune to come as a byproduct of being great at what I do.
Yeah.
Instead of getting famous and getting money for just doing some wild stuff that's out of character. And so I look at that and I go, you know what? The followers are going to come because I'm going to keep coming, and I'm going to keep putting great stuff out and better stuff out. And I'm going to keep working hard. So I kind of sat back, and that gave me peace to go, it's going to be okay. And there's no way to live your life going, oh, that's not good enough. I need more. I need more. I need more. It's good to be motivated like that, but you have to keep that in check. And I'm sure you go through that. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You're somebody building something. So your brain's always going. I mean, you're like you said, you're writing on walls and shit. So it's and that's a great thing. But sometimes you got to sit in that chair outside by your deck or your pool or whatever you have, and somebody's got to put their feet up and look around at the trees and mountains and go, all right, I came through all of this and I'm still here. I'm here. It's a tough thing to do, but I'm learning how to do it. Plus, I have children, and my children, when I look at my kids, and it's everything. My kids are everything. My family is everything. So I look back and I'm like, I'm good, man. I'm good. Like, how dare I be upset and think things aren't good enough when I have healthy children?
Yeah. It's so rare, honestly. I've talked to so many comedians, and life on the road is toxic in many ways. It can be very, very lonely, dangerous, a lot of addiction. And I remember just every time I've ever interacted with you, you always circle back to your values and your purpose, which is your family. And I think that's such a great thing that you have that anchor.
Yeah. It's, when my kids, my wife's busy. She works, and she's got this go thing. But when I come home and things are settled down, and I could look at everything that's going on in my situation, and with my kids being home still, that there's going to come a time where they go to college, and there's going to be that kind of, and it's like, while that's not the case, I really want to soak all that in as much as I can and really be the best dad that I can, but still have a balance of, okay, now it's time to go work, go to the hotel, get rest, and some of those things you just mentioned was tough young. Not that I would ever want to do any kind of substances or anything, but, I'm home, and then I go on the road. I do 3 shows or 4 shows or 6 shows in a weekend.
Yeah.
And all the shows go great, and people want to go have a drink. Then you're caught. Like, when I was younger, I'd be caught in that situation where I'm like, all right, I'm on my 3rd drink. It's getting late. I'm going to feel kind of crappy tomorrow if I keep this up.
Yeah.
But I've learned over time, get rest on the road now, relax on the road, let it kind of be. I turned it into a positive instead of something where it's like, it's on my terms. It's like, oh, maybe I'll have a glass of wine tonight, and then I'm going back to the room. But that was an adjustment period too.
Yeah, that's incredible. I remember I met you when I was so young. I feel like I've aged so much mentally since the first time I met you. But I remember you were one of the first comedians I talked to who talked specifically, like, you would never drink before going on stage. It just wasn't something that was ever even part of your realm, which seems like a very small thing, but it shows a lot about, like, the focus and the determination and the mindset and the purpose. Again, like, why are you there? It's not common. Tell me about your son. Is he dating? I don't know how old he is. Is he like a little mini you? Are you giving him advice?
It's funny. My daughter, Sophia, she is 12, and she's a mini me. much better looking and cuter, but she's a mini me as far as the traits, as far as, like, the way we are. She's very perceptive. She goes in a room and she can read everybody. And that's a gift I feel like I've been blessed with. My son is 15, and he's a lot like my wife. He's a lot like my wife, Stacy. Looks like him. My son, believe it or not, is very more Scandinavian looking, blue eyes, dirty blonde hair. He looks like a California surf kid. Really, really handsome boy, both of them. He's more like, if he feels bad, he wants to kind of go in his room and he wants to process it alone. He doesn't want to lay it all out. He needs that solitude, he needs that. My daughter and I are like, let's get this out now. I need to work this out. I'm not moving forward until we work this out. She's very much like, you hurt my feelings and I don't appreciate that. You're not going to get away with that. So she has a little bit of that. The thing that she has that I don't love, that is my fault, she can be a little vengeful for people that do her wrong. And I'm trying to let that go, but she's like...
she's the assassin. I remember. She's got this, yeah, she cut the throat with the lightsaber when the fight was already over. She's very much, one time she was like, I'll kill you and dance on your grave when I'm done. And I was like, what? So like, she's this little cute fireball, and she's so cute, so you can't believe these things come out of her mouth. And my son is just both good athletes. My son is like a top basketball player in the school. Nice. Now he plays golf. He's kind of very laid back, very, very well-rounded, an unbelievable honor student. These kids do better in school than I ever did because I was kind of very misguided. I was very distracted. I had a lot of horrible things going on at home. So I was like lashing out. Sure. Maybe
for attention, maybe for whatever it was. And I see now why that was. But they're very different. They're living a little better life.
Sure. No, that's so cool. I was going to say that humor, like, I think it's contagious. There's obviously like a gift, right? But it's also contagious. So like, how do you, like, are they all funny? Like, because you're funny?
No, sometimes they're like, yes, everybody's got a great sense of humor, of course. So we can all laugh and we have a great time laughing, and everybody's sense of humor is great. My wife loves the same comedy movies that I did, and she watched, my kids are like that, but I'm really not a comic that's on when I'm not on.
So when you're at the grocery store, you're just at the grocery store.
Yeah, like people have said to my wife, like, I can't believe he's a comedian because it doesn't seem like that. But what's funny is, like, I've seen Chris Rock interact and he's very shy and quiet. I've seen Dave Chappelle in public. I'm friends with a lot of these comedians, and comedians, for the most part, yes, there's a handful that just need attention all the time. So it's always on and it's always exhausting because it's like enough. But for the most part, it's like, no, that's what I do. I love doing it and I feel blessed to have the gift to do it. Yeah. But when I'm chilling, like I'm good,
Yeah, it's a sign of intelligence. And so this was in my research as well. So like traditionally, it's like you have introverts, and the way that you determine it is like your son. You said that he goes in his room in order to like recharge. And so he's probably more on the introverted side. And so you have introverts who like recharge by just kind of finding their solitude. Then you have extroverts who recharge by getting the energy. And people who have higher intelligence, EQ, they're able to do both, but they'll lean one way or another. So like you can go on stage and master, Madison Square Garden like you did, and you'll feed off the energy, right? Because it's fire. But then after, you still lean a little bit to the introverted. That's how I am too, where it's like I lean towards introvert, and that's how I recharge. But it is a sign of higher intelligence to be able to do both. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I feel like if you're just one way, it's not as, I think you should be able to do both. And this job has given me elation on a level. That Madison Square Garden set, which some people think was the greatest set of my life, I think it's in the probably top 3 moments of my professional life. And to have that moment be almost it was such an elation. It was an out of body elation.
Wow.
And then you come down and you're just kind of like, it takes a couple little while, and then you come down and to have that balance, because you can't always be like that up or, and it's very sad if you're always down. So I think you're right with that.
Right. Interesting. So you've influenced so many comedians. What about the comedians that have influenced you? Like, what do you watch stand-up specials like at home?
No, I don't watch comedy. Really, if I'm scrolling on my phone and a funny clip comes on of a stand-up, and I know, the comedy community is a lot smaller than people think. So I know we know everybody. I would say probably out of the 600 or whoever, how many you've interviewed, was it 600? Was it
more? Like, I can't stop, but now there's no like scientific purpose. So like originally, I don't know how much you know about it, but like originally I was focused on the way in which like laughter impacts the people in the audience, because they were bringing stand-up comedians into the cancer hospitals where I was working. And I was publishing my research on the psychosocial aspects of cancer care. So like what things impact the reduction in tumor sizes and the increase in survivorship. And the comedians in laughter was not even on my radar, but they had comedians coming into these chemo wards. And I was kind of like, what? That's crazy. And so I was studying the audience to be like, okay, so these people are passive, participants receiving laughter, basically. And then I shifted the light onto the comedians to be like, if these people are just passively enjoying it and it's increasing their wellness and their health and literally helping them fight cancer, what happens to the comedians who spend all of their time really creating laughter? And it just blew my mind. I abandoned the patients completely after I got published.
That's incredible. And I love how you were like, I mean, I don't know why I keep doing this, because scientifically it doesn't matter anymore. But I mean, I probably know the majority of them. So like the comedy community is very small. So if a friend comes across my phone and I see something, or even just a new comic that I'm like, oh, let's see what this joke is. Because the way sometimes you can see the captions without hearing. So I'll always like, if there's something that interests me, but as far as sitting and watching stand up, I just don't. And I like that I don't, because I don't want any ideas in my head. I don't want anybody else's, the perspective on anything, because when I think of the joke, I want it to be the way that I saw it the first time.
Yeah.
But I've always said this, and I'll say it again. The one comedian that just, when I watch him talk, mesmerizes me is Eddie Murphy. And he's such a phenomenon. He's such an icon that to think he retired stand up at 25 years old, he just, and then, he has 10 kids now. He's very involved in his kids' life. He's a very laid back guy. But I was a little boy in a movie theater watching him, and to do some of the things that he did, as far as not financially now, but to be able to do that, and then there's just there even comedy. Let me say this: even comedy I don't like, I respect, because I know how hard it is to get to that level. So it might not be my cup of tea. Comedy's subjective, but I'll be like, wow, for that person to get that, and for that person to do that, God bless them. That's such an achievement.
Yeah, it's incredible. I always kind of go back to the Janet Jackson, "What have you done for me lately?" The whole bit.
It's so great. I mean, he was doing that, his drunk father, and he really brought you to that. He really brought you to like the fight between his drunk father and his mother. And then he's like, "You will never go outside again." And then he's like, "You better call your friend and tell him, wait, you can't use the phone. You better open the window and scream your head off." Like, he brought me in that kitchen in that fight.
Yeah.
And or what about, everybody had McDonald's, but his grandmother made him some greasy thing that wasn't McDonald's, and he's crying. You actually feel that. Like, that's what comedy, like, one of my favorite things about what I do. If somebody's like, "What's your favorite thing about comedy?" One of my favorite things in comedy is when I'm on stage telling a story, and I could be killing the room, but that moment where it's dead silent because they're listening so intently to every word I'm saying, and they're into it because I feel like they're visualizing the picture I'm painting. And for me to know that I'm making somebody else's imagination take them to a place, and then they're laughing, I don't think there could be a better thing to do in this world, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like you have them in your hands in a really positive way. It sounds strange to say it like that, but it's just, it's a beautiful thing. And in that moment, you're taking them away from anything in their life where, they may not, like, they need that relief just to have that time to really be present. So that's a gift. It's amazing.
I look at it like a gift. I really do. I feel very, lucky and fortunate to be able to, to do for somebody, like for somebody to pay me a sum of money to just give my imagination and humor. Sometimes I'm like, am I stealing money? Like, am I stealing this? Like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
That's
Like,
awesome.
because sometimes you could get a nice sum of money for just like 20 minutes of being you. And you're like, but then you're like, oh, well, you know what? All of those horrible, shitty times in bad hotels, doing bar shows. I performed in somebody's living room when I was young for like $200. They told me
That's
to show.
awesome.
Did I ever tell you that story?
No.
Oh, dude. So I was just started comedy. It was like right when websites were a thing. I had like this website that was awful. Looking back, it was probably like one of the worst. If you saw the website now, but it was good for back then. You're talking 20 years ago or whatever. And my sister worked at this daycare center, and I guess people saw some of my stuff online, and they said to my sister, "That's your brother?" And she's like, "Would he do a party?" And like she was like, "It's $200. Would you do it?" And I'm young. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do $200 on a
Pretty good.
Friday or Saturday. That's good." So I said, "Tell me where to go for this party to perform." And I just pull up to a residency. I just pull up to a house. And I'm like, what? And I go in, and there's like hors d'oeuvres in the kitchen and people walking around with beer. And I'm going like, there was like, dudes were watching playoff football in one room. There's a party of people mingling with cocktails in another room. There's people open in a kitchen, just in a regular. And I'm going like, oh, where is am I in the right? And they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to do it in the living room in a little bit. And then all of a sudden, they're like, all right, everybody, comedy show. And these adults rush to the living room, and they're sitting on the couch. There were adults sitting on the floor. There were adults sitting down the staircase. And all of a sudden, I'm standing in front of the TV with an empty Corona bottle as my microphone. And I'm killing. I was just like doing like an American Idol joke. I'm like, and like they like clapped and everything, and I got my $200 and left. So when I think of those moments, I'm like, yeah, maybe I deserve that lump sum of money.
That's so cool. Like,
Yeah.
that is so cool.
Yeah.
Those are like the memories that you have to like, remember and be like, I did this in a living room. That's so wild to me. Like, I can imagine it just from the way in which you describe it. That's crazy. So that's like a great, opportunity for you to, people watch. It's like, the research shows you're better at emotional intelligence and reading people. And each one of those moments, it's like you have mass exposure to a group of people, which multiplies your intelligence. How do you feel about knowing that and not saying it in like, because you're so humble, so I don't mean to say it like that, but like, how do you feel knowing that you're usually like, one of the smartest people in a room?
Well, first of all, thank you. I don't know how it equates to like, if you give me if you give me a big hard math problem, it's going to take me some time. I'm going to have to get back to
GPT.
I'm going to have to get back to the school thing. But I just always had this I always had this ability to, when I walk in a room and I see people, and the older I get, the better it is. And the more I traveled, I was able to get better and better. And I feel like it's like this Jedi superpower that I have, where I could tell you this one thing, and I really appreciate that, but it's cool. But sometimes it's like, it could almost be sad seeing what's going on and learning. Oh, like I remember one time I was in a room with, and I was never told this and it's not confirmed, but I know I was in a room once with a couple that was married, and there was a gentleman in the party, another gentleman in the party, and his behavior let me understand that woman was cheating on the husband with that guy. I just knew. I knew the way the behavior was. I knew by the way certain things, and nobody else knew anything, but I'm literally watching this, and like I'm going, and it went off like a light bulb after, but I was like, that's not normal behavior. That's not normal to kind of say, this doesn't seem right over here. And I was able to do that. So sometimes it's like a gift, but other times you're like, oh man, but I love being able to know that because I can tell my children. I
Right.
can tell my children, like, if you feel something, it's probably right. If you sense something's going on, go with that and stuff like that. So that in that aspect, it's kind of cool. And it's really cool to feel like you kind of are one of the smartest. I don't want to say that because I know there's doctors and lawyers in the crowd, but it is nice to be on stage telling jokes, knowing that you're kind of ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It can be isolating when you're, in a room and you notice something that is very obvious to you, like the sexual chemistry probably between these people. And you're kind of like, how does no one else see this? Like, it's so, prevalent. All the clues are there.
Yeah, but the weird thing there was no sexual thing going on. There was no even chemistry. It was, like there was no like they're near each other. As a matter of fact, they weren't. That's why I said it went off later. It wasn't something where everybody in the room could go, wow, that's a little off. It was something very almost discreet and something that nobody understood. But then I realized why certain things were said. And then I kind of realized, oh, this marriage isn't happy either. Oh, I got it. And still to this day, it's not confirmed, but I know.
Yeah. And you could be like a criminal profiler. You know those shows where it's like they just know like the psychology of the serial killers and like why they do what they do. It's emotional intelligence.
I could tell you something that's really cool. And my wife could attest to this, but a lot of times, George Carlin said this as well. But a lot of times I would say something and I'd get freaked out because it would come to pass. It was almost like a prediction or a psychic thing, right?
Mm.
And I'll never forget, like my wife goes, wow, that's like the fourth time you've done that. And I remember George Carlin would say things and like things that he would say would kind of happen. Now, by no stretch of the imagination am I trying to compare myself to legends like that. But I'll never forget, I showed up to Syracuse, New York, which is one of my least favorite places. Some of the worst. But anyway, other than the university, so I show up to Syracuse and I had a one-night gig there. And I get to the hotel room and I turn the TV on. I put my bag down. And what comes on the TV was Chris Rock on Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton, rest his soul. And I just sit down and James Lipton looks at Chris Rock and he goes, is it true you said that? And again, I'm not trying to say that I'm great. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but he just said this and it kind of resonated with me. He goes, Chris, is it true that you've said that every great comedian is a little psychic? And he goes, yes. He goes, every great comedian has this thing. And I remember calling my wife right away and I'm like, remember how you were saying that I'm saying things that happen? Mm-hmm. And like, I've noticed weird things that I've said in my specials or that I've said that then later I'm going, man, is that a coincidence? So, but it's probably not a psychic thing. It's probably just a way that you could kind of see things going and have that ability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it could be like I guess the way that I would kind of process it is I think from a very young age, you were exposed to the concept that there's more than we know. And that's a high sign of intelligence to say there's more that we do not know than we do know. So like, you remember how you were saying like your dad saw a UFO, right? So from a very young age, that would have seemed crazy back then, not now, but like being open to the idea that you don't know, therefore you can't disqualify it is a sign of intelligence because you're saying, it could be self-fulfilling prophecy. It could be you connecting the dots. Energy, I believe energy is real. And like what you put out there will most definitely, you don't have to see it. Like it's real.
Oh my God. I can't believe you said that. Like, that's my whole thing. And like, sometimes I'm afraid to tell people that because I don't want them to be like, man, Paul's fuck, but I really I really believe, first of all, I'm very spiritual. I believe in God. I'm not afraid to say that. I believe in something for sure. And I've felt it. But I truly believe when you put out there and you say something, it's coming back. I believe that. I believe that there is the power to manifest things. It's real, and it really is real. And I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of very successful people say that because when I hear that, I'm going, yes. Like, and sometimes you say that to people and they roll their eyes and they're like, whoa, so what? I could just go out and say, oh, I want $1 million tomorrow. I'm like, no, you're not understanding. You're not understanding. Nobody's saying that. I'm not fucking stupid. I understand that. But you know what I mean? Like, excuse me, I don't know if I can curse on this. I apologize.
You can. I got canceled already.
Yeah. Hey, like I said, you got the freedom now.
I do.
No, but it's like, I don't mean, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire and not work at it. No, but like, if you say things to yourself, and it's been known, it's been documented, they've talked about it. If you say things to yourself, even a positive thing, it will come to you. It'll come to pass. Bruce Lee said something, rest his soul, and he said something amazing where he was like, don't even joke about yourself in a bad way because your body doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
You internalize it, doesn't know the difference. So like when I hear like a friend be like, dude, I hate myself, I'm such a piece of shit, this and that, I'm like, if you feel that, then you're gonna be that inside to you. But if you say, no, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, you can say, oh, I've made mistakes. We all have. Yeah. But to dwell on it and keep yourself in that mistake, I think it's actually a physical thing. The thing that I talked about on Rogan, if you saw the Rogan thing, when I went through that, my brain made me have symptoms that I did not have, and I physically had the symptom. No. Your brain can make you, if you sat down and you thought that my shoulder hurts, and you really for hours were thinking that your right shoulder hurts, there is going to be a pain. You are going to feel something there. And the brain is so powerful, but it's the same way for positive things. Sure. And I learned that. I've learned that. And every time I've been down and every time I've been out, and there's been a lot of that, people see some cool things, but you got to understand how many times I've been told no. How many times executives didn't like me because of sometimes the way that I look too. That's a funny thing. Everybody always talks about, people could talk about like, oh, privilege in this and diversity in that. I've had where there were like, people look at me and they'll say, oh, this guy is just an alpha male, tough guy. He's going to be like a bully, and he's a not smart, and he could be this. And it's like, you don't even know me. Or you could have somebody look at a joke and go, oh, well, then he's just, if he talks about women like that, he must be a misogynist. And it's like, hey, you're not listening to the joke. And B, you're putting me in this thing that's not real. But yes, it was a great win to get a Netflix thing. Yes, it was a great win to be able to perform in Madison Square Garden. Yes, all of these things, getting a part in a show or a movie, those are blessings. Do you know how many times it's a no? Do you know how many times I'm sitting there and I got to, we got to think of our next move? I remember I was out at this like just function, is outdoor food trucks and music, and I'm with my family on a summer night, a beautiful night, and this dude comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, Paul Virzi, man." I said, "Hey," he said, "I'm a big fan. I love your stuff." But I just got to ask you something. He goes, "You did the Netflix thing and all that. So like now what's next? What's next for you?" And I was almost like, "Oh shit, what is next?" I'm about to call my manager. Shit, I don't even know. Like he put me on, he made me. And I was like, I don't know. But I've learned that, as long as you have a plan and short-term and long-term goals, and as long as you're happy with what you're doing and you kind of have a plan for what you're doing in your life, I think good things will happen. And I believe in God. I pray, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I know a lot of people are ashamed to say it, or people don't want to say it.
That's crazy. Why? I pray. I fast on Fridays and Mondays. I told you I went through like one of the worst years of my life. And I talked to a priest, and I started just really focusing on higher level, thinking. This might sound morbid. I wonder if you do this too, but I think about like death, like my eulogy, like what matters and what doesn't matter. It helps me focus on my son and things that really matter. You know what I mean? It's like not letting people put you in a box. It sounds like they try to, you're a celebrity, so they try to say, well, which box does he fit in? And when you have that, higher order thinking, it's like you recognize and trust within yourself that you are bigger than any box. There's no box.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's because you're so intelligent, and you're so you're such a thinker that those are all smart things, because when you're thinking about the death and the eulogy, you're also, in a way, without even really, without saying like that, you're kind of thinking of your legacy and what you are going to leave behind and what you've contributed. Even subconsciously, you're probably going like, what, in a weird way, you're questioning your purpose through when you're gone. And right, like, and that's actually, I mean, listen, ignorance is bliss, right? I don't think people that are not, they're walking around like, oh, I'm not going to die in 100 years. Like, they don't. And you're like, you gotta really kind of see, and not to say anything negative about people that aren't intelligent, but I think the intelligent people really kind of look at mortality, look at legacy, look at, the future of their family and moving forward. I think that's a normal thing. But, when I was down and out, though, and I went through the thing that I told you with Rogan, getting back to what we were saying, I had a really I was in one of the worst places mentally. This was in 2016, which I didn't think I was going to get out of. I didn't think I was going to, like, the thought of living through the year 16 was so far from me. I was thinking about being gone and what's going to happen. And it was, my kids were young, so it was hard to even look at my kids because I was like, they're not going to see me or know. And I mean, I could get emotional thinking about it now because I was like, man, I was in this dark place. Mm-hmm. And then, and I remember somebody going, you're going to come back stronger, you're going to come back stronger. And then a year later, I did the Comedy Central thing, but I would go to a doctor. I went to a doctor and I go, I have a brain tumor. And he's like, no, I don't think you do. And I'm like, you don't understand. I got pressure in my head. I'm getting dizzy on stage. Something is wrong. I feel like this out of body, something is wrong. They're like, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. And I mean, I'm convinced. Then when it wasn't that, thank God, then it was this. But all of the symptoms were real because of my brain power.
Right. Right.
And people have that. So anyway, I believe, going back, I know that was a roundabout way, but
how did you get out of it though?
Honestly, I think God, doctors, family, people that love me. And I think the biggest one too was wanting to get better. Like, I didn't want to be there. Like, I didn't want to be there. Like, some people will like medicate with drugs or alcohol. And I was just like, I mean, I woke up every day. And I mean, to say this now, the dream then when I was going through it was to be able to say this now and while I'm mentally good. So, but I was like woken up every day, no matter if I went to bed at 4 a.m. or if I went to bed at 9 p.m, I woke up at 7:30 every day. And as soon as my eyes opened, I was in the middle of a panic attack every day. Every day, the worst anxiety you could ever feel. No hangovers ever done that, maybe a couple, but like no feeling. Every day I woke up in panic. And the only time I felt good during the day was when it was after dinner around 6, 7, because I knew the day was over and I could just get in bed and not have to worry or feel guilty about it. Getting a glass of water in the middle of the night was the biggest task. I remember my mom was going through it with me and she's like, because, my wife had to run the house and the kids are like, oh, dad's sick, Yeah, that's tough. And I remember I was hanging with my mom and she just handed me a glass of water and a sandwich. And I was like, you're saving my life, because I couldn't even do that. Yeah. So to get out of that, and then I look back and I'm like, what am I worried about? What am I worried about? An executive not liking me? Think about how crazy that is. I'm worried about somebody that's never lived in my shoes. Why? Because I don't like a joke, and I got it now. All of a sudden, but my future has to do with this. It hangs in the balance of this person, how their mood is. Yeah. And so that's why I'm kind of very much leaning towards, unless something changes in the next little bit, I'm very much leaning towards just doing everything on my own from now on, building my YouTube channel, putting my own specials out, putting my own money up for my specials, which I did on this last one. I put my own money up, not answering to anybody. I tell the director what I want. I tell the producer what's going to happen. I dictate it and I put the money up. And then when you do that, nobody could take it from you.
Yeah, they can't. Because it's like it's freedom, like you said. I just want to say, so what you're describing is like the crux of my research. So what I found is that the most successful, incredibly, brilliant comedians have a moment where, in a sense, it's this extreme physical or psychological, let's say, trauma, but it's a moment where they somehow, through resilience, get over it. And then I mean, they crush it, but they have to go through that. And what happens is it's two roads. You have some people who don't get through it and they just give up. And then you have the other people who say, fuck it, I'm going to do it and I'm not going to care and no one's going to stop me. And then they just soar. It's crazy to me the way that you describe it.
Yeah, it's so cool to talk to somebody that understands it. Because a lot of times you say that to people, but like you studied this, like this is what you do.
I mean, it's like this thing.
And that's why I enjoyed talking to you in Arizona, because when you talk to somebody that studied it and knows it, because sometimes people could be like, oh my God, how could something like that happen? How horrible, like, and they just really don't get it. They're listening to words like anxiety and depression and they think, oh, that happens, you get out of it. But like, yeah, there was trauma from when I was younger. There was that was traumatic. This was just something that I guess, like you said, in a weird way, maybe in a weird way had to happen in order for me to take the steps forward, to get past it and to get above it.
Yeah, because what happens is you have a moment where you're like, nothing's going to stop me. And sometimes it's people who have been diagnosed with certain types of ailments. So like Cedric, the entertainer, he had like a rash on his head and he was constantly like, really down about it. And then eventually he made it part of his thing. But it's like he had to have a moment where he had to embrace it. And then that's what allowed him to let it go. That's just one example. But it's like, it's just so wild to me the way that, because I haven't had this conversation in a while and it's like cookie cutter. I know this sounds morbid, but since you're such a, respectful comedian, you should try and get all the comedians to donate their brains to science when they die. So we can really study, like, can you like help me with this campaign?
That might be a hard sell now. But I'll definitely, that's really funny. It's almost like, that's what the NFL players with CTE, they were donating because they showed that like a 50-year-old ex-football player, when his brain looked like an 87-year-old man's brain because of everything that it went, and which is so, incredible. But it's nice to know too, like it's nice to talk to somebody like you that understands the comedian brain a little bit, because we're damaged and we had stuff happen, but for you to say, oh no, that's kind of a sign of something good, and an awareness that like you have, and that's why you're able to go on stage. I had a question for you though.
Okay.
Did you find in your study that a lot of because I see this sometimes, and like I've heard like that a lot of comedians, even that I know and respected, are on the spectrum. And did you find a lot of that? Did you find a lot of, because I see that, and like I know that like I don't have any of that, and I wonder like if I talk to somebody that I can kind of maybe tell is, and I was just wondering, there's a percentage of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't focus on it, but I definitely, like in a generalized way, found that there's a very strong correlation between humor, intelligence, and high intelligence is a very strong correlation with depression and different, you think about all types of artists. Like I specifically focused on comedians, but you think about musicians who have had, incredible talents, gifts that end up, hurting themselves and having addiction, et cetera. So I didn't focus on autism in particular, or being on the spectrum in that capacity, but I'm sure that if I did another study focusing on that, the data would show that there's a higher percentage for sure.
Well, it's like you said, like there, I know depression and anxiety, not so much depression in mine. I only had that one depression that was like a clinical 90-day thing, but more anxiety and OCD from trauma younger, and from feeling like my parents were, like I felt like, not secure, I should say, is the best way. So I think my humor and telling stories, when we moved a lot, making people like me that way. They're like, oh, let Paul tell a story. And I gained friends that way. But I do think, there's a there is definitely a twisted, weird thing with arts and creativity and some sort of something.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wish there was more funding in the sectors. So again, I'm going to put the plug in to donate the brains. So, however many years after we're gone, it's like someone will benefit from understanding, and maybe it'll help people fight some of these really tough times that they go through because they're able to say, hey, look, there's like a fighter inside you that you can't really quantify. That's what it is. There's like a deep strength within you. And if those people know it when they're going through that darkness, think about how much that could maybe help them overcome it, maybe faster, or maybe they have to do it. I don't know.
That's amazing, man, because it's like people have said that to me too. Like people have been like, man, like the fight you have and you're this and that. And I remember somebody going like, even when I was down, they'd be like, man, you're a lion. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't feel like that, but it's almost like something you can't help I can't help but not just go, right. And have that heart. I always tell my kids too, like, if you're going to do something, do it. Like do it. And there's no, they're growing up easier than I did, but you still have to have a little bit of that fight in you, and like the stuff you're doing, like that year you went through, and that horrible shit that you went through, and then getting canceled and going through all of these different things. And like, I see where you're sitting, it's like that's what I mean when I was like, go sit on the chair and look around outside and be like, wow, I did that. I unfortunately, I don't think you can teach that. I think some people you can motivate, but at the end of the day, you can give as much of that, but there needs to be a will. There needs to be a will and a desire within the individual, I think.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. So I'll say this. So you do all the things that are in all of the books and all the blogs and all the people who are like, this is what you have to do. So for instance, you said, if you have negative self-talk, even if you're just saying it casually, Brene Brown, her thing is, I am are the two most powerful words in the English language. So if you say I am something negative, you are hurting yourself, even if you say it lightly. And she's, all over leadership, literature, leadership programs, et cetera. So you have people, CEOs like me, who spend all this time studying it. And then I meet someone like you who just does it because you intuitively know it. So I think that you can practice and learn it, but it's never going to be the same as just intuitively trusting yourself and knowing. And if you were to do, like, I'm sure you do all of, like, not all of the things that I'm doing, but I'm sure you're exposed to different types of frameworks. You probably get it so much faster because, like, I already know this. You're just putting it into an equation, because that's kind of how I am, where I'm like, this makes sense to me. Like, I don't know why I didn't think about it before, but now I get it,
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. It's fascinating. But like I said, that's why it's so cool to talk to somebody like you who understands it, because I don't know that that's the case with everybody. But so yeah, I mean, you're like a CEO, entrepreneur, right? Doctor, all that, right?
Thanks. You're making me blush. I appreciate you so much, Paul. Like, every time I talk to you, I feel I can, like, tackle the world, like all the stuff. I feel like I can do it all. So I cannot thank you enough.
No, thank you. It's so cool. And like, sometimes it's nice because I'm going through some things right now, not bad or depression, but like business, professional things that I really need to make decisions on. And sometimes it's nice hearing me talk about almost like what I know I need to do.
Yeah.
But then you're almost like in this thing where you're like, but like, there's that question of, I want to do the right thing, but sometimes being able to talk it out. So, I appreciate you, but like, we're in this thing now where, it's just a really scary, weird time with everything going on with like an election and people worried about what you could say, where like, I just wish it could be like where you could just have open discussions and not hate on somebody or cancel somebody or not want to deal with somebody just for the way that they think a little differently than you. I mean, that's what it should be. It should be free thinking, and it should be free discussion. And it really is a weird time that it's almost not that right now. And I'm not trying to bring this down because this is a great discussion.
No, not at all. I mean, what can we do? Like, give us advice. Like, what can we do? Like, I'll tell you what I do. Okay. So I purposely say things that are politically incorrect because people usually assume that I'm going to be like that PC person, and they'll kind of look at me and be like, do you know that that's not really a word you're allowed to say anymore? And I'm like, why? Like, I love this word. You're not taking it away from me. But like, I'm not on stage. You know what I mean?
No, it's a great question. Like, what to do? I think I don't want to say just be around like-minded people, because that's really not fixing anything. But I wish that there was an opportunity to, like, I always think about this, but it would never happen. Let's say this, right? And there's no way to do this because that would be the weirdest thing in the world. But like, I always think, like, if you and I are at a party, right? And I'll just say, I'll make you the liberal and I'll be the conservative in this party. Okay. And you just don't want to talk to anybody, and you can't listen to anybody that has different views than you. And we'll use the example now. I'm Biden and I'm Kamala Harris all the way, blah, blah. And I go in there and I'm like, well, I'm conservative. I'm kind of going to go with Trump. You're like, I can't believe you like Trump. I would never talk to you. And we're at a party and like, you're giving dirty looks. And I'm like, okay, right. And then all of a sudden the next day or two, I see you getting like almost pinned by a car in a car accident. Right? God forbid. Or you're getting mugged at gunpoint. Something fucking horrific. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to step in and help you, right? You would listen to me right after that, right?
Yep.
So the question is, what can we do in that? Because we can't have the mugging at gunpoint everywhere. Yeah. So what can happen in that thing? Instead of something traumatizing and horrific, what can happen to make the person go, I'll at least listen to you? Because nobody is 100% crazy. I think people are brainwashed.
Yeah.
I think people are brainwashed on both sides. I think that elections take out the worst in somebody's passion for what they believe, not the best, the worst, because as soon as you're not like-minded, you're the enemy. A line gets drawn.
Yeah.
So I want to find out a way, and I always think of a way where, hey, can we have a beer and just talk about this? Yeah. And as a registered independent who kind of sees everything and makes fun of both and sees everything, I have my beliefs and I have my views where I lean and I see things a certain way, but I am totally open.
Right.
And I'm totally open to that. And I think, to answer your question, the one way that I found a way to fix it, because you can't have that horrible thing happen. I'm not going to save a bunch of people from being mugged. But in the comedy club, in the comedy room, because then everybody's disarmed. And you may have your one crazy leave. The other night I had to follow. I went last, and the comic on stage had a woman stand up right before I go on stage, and she goes, oh, fuck you and your Zionist bullshit, right? And she screams that in the club. And everyone's having a good time. Everybody is different. It's New York City, so you got all kinds of walks of life and different beliefs. And she says that, and I go on stage, and I actually turned it into a great, I got on stage and I go, what did I miss? And I just had a great time. But
you crushed it.
Yeah, I used it. I used it. And then I was like, I actually went right into Israel-Palestine jokes.
I love it. I love it.
And that's what I did. But if I can go on stage and kill and make everybody laugh and happy, and they talk to me and they shake my hand and I have a conversation with them, those people will listen a little bit.
Yeah.
So if the only way I can do it, because I can't fix everything, you can't fix everything, but if the way that I can do it is through comedy, and if you have a different view, then we could just sit and talk. I've seen one guy that really respected me and liked me, but he completely disagreed with what I was saying. But he listened. And then after he listened, he was like, okay, I could kind of see that. And it was a beautiful thing. So I guess you just got to try to be around people that, and then unfortunately, the last thing I'll say is there are some people that just cannot be helped. There are some people that no matter what you do, no matter what Maybe even if you do save them from being mugged, they're still going to be, and that's the type of person that I can't be around.
Right. No, it's just the polarization and the barriers that go up and the lack of, connection, because as soon as it's going back to this concept of putting people in boxes. It's like, you cannot put people in boxes. People are multifaceted. We're complex. And as soon as you label them in a certain way, whatever that label is, you can't just be like, oh, I completely reject everything coming out of your mouth because you are in this box now. You wouldn't want that to happen to you. It's like, why would you do that to someone else?
Yeah, that's actually the best point. Because the best point is, if you're in those shoes, you're not putting those shoes on you. You're just doing it everywhere else. And it went from, I disagree with you politically. Okay, great. But now it's, you should never say that. Now I saw something that just happened where a kid was in school and he was just handing out little American flags, little ones on a stick. And the teacher was so angry at him and collected all the American flags and walked away and marched away. And I'm going, well, wait a minute now. Now where are we at? Yeah. And again, this has nothing to do with an American flag should not have anything to do with your political views.
Agreed.
It's an American flag. It's the country we live in. But when that starts to go, then you got to start going like, what's happening? So to bring this whole thing full circle, it's the freedom that we talked about not letting those people ever do that to you. Right. And that's, that's it. And that's why I know, I almost said something. No, but that's why I'm really like, I'm happy for people like you and entrepreneurs like you who no longer have to be under some corporate, or what's it called, advertising, being tied up in these advertising chains that people are tied up in because, oh, you can't say that. Well, the company's going to leave you, and like making you feel like that when you're trying, all you're trying to do is help and be, you're just trying to make things better for people and let people be open-minded. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. You weren't trying to do anything. It's like the same thing with me. It's like you're going to watch a joke and listen, it's subjective. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't going to like it, but I can control it now. And I think that's what I'm going to do. And I hope, you know what I'll do? I'm going to send you the trailer for my new special.
Oh, I can't wait.
Anybody yet?
Okay. I am so honored. No, that's so great. I think that we're onto something. Just having the conversations, exposing people to just free thought without, and the big thing is intention. It's like, if you are not on stage with a negative intention, you're not trying to hurt anyone, you're not trying to say anything about any group of people, whatever it is, it's like, that really should be the focus. What is your intent? Your intent is to have a nice time and make people laugh. And it's just crazy to me that people are that psychotic.
and make a tough topic fun and light. How about that? Make a topic that is fun and light. I did a joke about the Israel and Palestine thing going on, and both people from both Israeli and Palestine people came up to me after the show going, I love that. That's great. Because I'm not trying to alienate anybody. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm trying to say there's something horrific going on. Mm-hmm. And let's at least, if we're at a comedy club having drinks, instead of feeling so horrible about it, let's just laugh for a second because it's not that serious in here.
In this moment, right.
In this moment, that's a horrible, serious thing. Let's kind of make light of it just so we can enjoy this evening. That's what we're trying to do as comedians. That's what everybody's trying to do, Right. And if last thing I'll say, my Sicilian grandmother, my grandmother came from Sicily when she was 10 years old, didn't speak a lick of English. Okay. My grandfather, Sicilian, they lived right outside New York City and right in the Bronx. And my grandmother was a Democrat. She had that view. And my grandfather was a Republican, and both kind of strong in their thing. And you know what? It worked out beautifully. They would talk about it. They would drink together. They would laugh together. And that's it. That's what it needs to be. And hopefully all of this chaos can be the peak. Like when you said you got to go through something, maybe the country's got to go through that thing to get there. Who knows? But as long as there's smart people like you, and as long as there's people like you, we're going to be all right.
Thank you, Paul. You're amazing. I appreciate you so much. PaulVirzi.com. Check him out everywhere. Just Google his name. You'll see pages and pages of incredible talents.
Yeah, check out. I'm building my YouTube page that we really just started. I've had it for a while, but we really started to like build the page. So just hit the subscribe button on the YouTube. I'm going to be putting a bunch of comedy clips, my old specials, my Netflix specials is going to go on my YouTube. So go to that, Paul Virzi on Instagram and everything. Thank you so much for having me, and check out the podcasts too.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm Dr. Sadhna, and this is Leader Voices. This show is brought to you by the American Express Leadership Academy Alumni Network and leaderstories.org. Leader Voices is audio engineered by Robbie Ladd and produced by Crepandian team at OTVO Digital. Special thanks to Caitlin Johnson and Michael Chang. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.